The Gaza Health Ministry reports that since October 7th, more than 46,726 Palestinians have been killed, including nearly 17,672 children. Updated figures also show that over 109,196 people have been injured in Gaza alone, with more than 11,160 missing under the rubble. In the West Bank, updated figures show that at least 841 people, including around 172 children, have been killed, with more than 6,700 people injured. Bodies of Gazans killed in overnight Israeli strikes arrived on today to Al Ali Arab Baptist Hospital in Gaza City as the US stepped up efforts to overcome sticking points between Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire to end the war. The dead included women and children killed in Israeli strikes on 2 houses in Gaza City, according to the enclave's health ministry.
قبل سنة 60 شهيد. هاي أخوي وأخوي ومرت أخوي وبنت أختي. إيش بدنا نجي؟ حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أخوي لفت مرته وأولاد. إيش بدنا؟
عيلة كدورة باعتبارها انمسحت عن الوجود. الآن عيلة كدورة لا تمتلك إلا 12 هوية. لا تمتلك إلا 12 هوية. أنا بقول حسبنا الله وأنت نعم الوكيل بس. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. اللهم أجرني في مصيبتي واخلفني خيرا منها. إيش بدي أقول؟ إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
As Israeli continued its bombardments, the US, Qatar and Egypt were making the most intensive effort in months to reach a ceasefire, with one source close to the talks saying this was the most serious attempt to reach a deal so far. Donald Trump has issued threats aimed at Panama and Greenland in a remarkable series of statements 2 weeks ahead of being sworn in as President of the United States.
I'm not going to commit to that.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Tuesday declined to rule out military or economic action as part of his desire to have the U.S. take back control of the Panama Canal and acquire the Danish territory of Greenland.
No, I can't assure you on either of those two, but I can say this. We need them for economic security.
The extraordinary statement came as Trump further outlined an expansionist agenda 2 weeks before he is sworn into office on January 20th in Washington.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran him.
Trump suggested he would impose tariffs on Denmark if it resists his offer to purchase Greenland, which he said is vital to U.S. national security. Denmark has said Greenland is not for sale. Aya Chemnitz is a Greenlandic member of the Danish parliament.
It's a question of whether should we maybe collaborate a bit more with the US. We shouldn't be bought by anyone because Greenland is not for sale and Greenland will not be for sale, but we can have a closer collaboration on business development with the US.
Her comments come as Trump's eldest son, Donald Jr. on Tuesday, arrived in Greenland's capital Nuuk on a private visit. When it comes to Panama, its president Jose Raul Molino has previously rejected the notion of turning the canal back to the U.S., which had owned it before handing over control to Panama in 1999.
We gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages.
The press conference, Trump's second since he won the November 5th election, took place 1 day after Congress formally certified his victory.
Nobody's ever won so many cases as I have.
Panama's foreign minister rejected Trump's claims out of hand. Trump went on to say that he is going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
The Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Trump's refusal to rule out military as well as economic force to further his plan for territorial expansion has set alarm bells ringing around the globe. But Trump also extended the threat of economic sanctions to Canada, against whom he repeated his earlier assertion that the US's northern neighbor should not be an independent country at all, but merely the 51st state of America. Outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was not a snowball's chance in hell of Canada becoming part of the US. France's foreign minister responded to Trump's threats against Greenland, which is part of Denmark, by asserting that the EU would defend member states from all threats. Trump's pre-inauguration outburst is not the only sign of how disruptive his presidency could be for global stability. His self-described first buddy, billionaire Elon Musk, has made a series of incendiary remarks about the UK, which has brought public rebuttals from Prime Minister Kier Starmer and Health Secretary Wes Streeting. Another billionaire who seems unable to resist the Trump effect is Facebook owner Mark Zuckerberg, who has announced that he will now follow Musk's example at X and allow unchecked fake news to circulate on his platforms, making them more Trump-friendly.
It's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
Meta Platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg said on Tuesday his company will end its U.S. fact-checking program and replace it with a user-driven system similar to community notes on Elon Musk's X platform. Zuckerberg also said Meta will reduce the curbs on discussions around contentious topics, such as immigration and gender identity.
We've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
The move marks a reversal in Meta's policy, as Zuckerberg has long championed active content moderation, despite criticism from conservatives over alleged censorship on its platform. It also comes shortly after the company named Republican policy executive Joel Kaplan as global affairs head, and elected Dana White, CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship and a close friend of President-elect Donald Trump, to its board.
We're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams.
Some of Meta's fact-checking partners were surprised by the policy change, while others, including Reuters, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Meanwhile, Elon Musk's X has come under fire for loosening its content moderation rules. The European Commission is investigating X over dissemination of illegal content in the EU and the effectiveness of measures taken to combat information manipulation, including the community notes system. For its part, Meta says it has no immediate plan to end third-party fact-checking in the EU.
Trump may behave more cautiously in office than his recent outbursts suggest, as he did in his first term as president. Then controversial sidekicks like campaign organizer and mouthpiece Steve Bannon were cast aside when they became too prominent. Trump may be more circumscribed in office, and Musk may go the same way as Bannon. But Trump is now in his final term with no election to win in 4 years' time. So Trump Unleashed may last through his swearing in and into his time in office.
A wildfire tore through an upscale suburb north of Los Angeles on Tuesday. Officials said nearly 3,000 acres of the Pacific Palisades area between Santa Monica and Malibu had burned. One man who lives there, named Peter, said he was trying to retrieve things from his home when he decided it was too dangerous.
I got within 300 yards of my house, and some gentleman picked me up and took me the rest of the way. The fire department stopped, and as it stopped, we saw some literally flaming debris landed in the road near where we were standing. So it seemed to me, let's get out of here. But whatever I lose, and there's nothing I can do about it.
The blaze destroyed houses and led to the evacuation of some 30,000 people, while firefighters raced to stamp out the blaze. These aircraft scooped water from the nearby Pacific Ocean to drop on the flames. Reuters spoke to this woman stuck in traffic as residents fled the area beneath huge plumes of smoke.
I mean, I've never seen anything. Fires were this close to the cars. People left their cars on Palisades Drive. Burning up the hillside, the palm trees, everything's going. And the wind and the firemen are great, but you can only do so much.
Time-lapse videos captured the rapid advance of the fire, which grew sixfold in a matter of hours. Officials warned the worst wind conditions were expected to come overnight. That has fueled concerns that more neighborhoods could be forced to flee. California Governor Gavin Newsom urged residents to heed evacuation orders and warned that the winds could produce more fires elsewhere.
We are anticipating, hopefully we're wrong, but we're anticipating other fires happening concurrently. And that's exactly the previous experience we've had with these kinds of wind events.
The fire chief of Los Angeles said no injuries had been reported so far. Before the fire started, officials had already warned of extreme fire danger through Thursday from powerful winds that arrived following an extended dry spell. Known as Santa Ana winds, the strong, dry westerly winds originating in inland deserts are more common in the fall, but can affect Southern California any time of year.
A contentious report by the right-wing think tank Policy Exchange has ignited accusations of Islamophobia after targeting two candidates vying for the position of Secretary-General of the Muslim Council of Britain. The report alleges that the candidates hold views that could hinder Muslim integration into British society, prompting sharp backlash from one of the frontrunners, Dr. Mohammed Wajid Akhtar. Wajid Akhtar, a medical doctor and community activist, slammed the report, accusing Policy Exchange of misrepresenting his views as part of a broader effort to vilify active Muslims. He emphasized his vision of fostering unity among all Britons and rejected the think tank's portrayal of his advocacy as divisive. Speaking to Middle East Eye, he said, "It is troubling that others seek to define what makes a good Muslim based on the ideological convictions of hard-right think tanks, rather than engaging with the lived experiences and contributions of British Muslims themselves." The report highlights remarks Akhtar made advocating for Muslims to identify primarily with their faith while maintaining their broader British identity. It also critiques his opposition to New Year celebrations and his call for Muslims to become a powerful community, capable of contributing more to society. Akhtar defended these views as a means of empowering British Muslims, adding that they do not diminish shared British identity or humanity. The controversy comes as Labour's government continues the policy of disengagement with the MCB, which began under the previous Conservative administration. Policy Exchange's report claims that no government has dealt with the MCB since 2009, although this policy of exclusion was formalised by the Conservatives in 2021. The report has drawn further criticism for targeting another Secretary-General candidate, Dr. Mohammed Idris. A consultant physician, Idris was criticised for past comments praising the Iranian Revolution and Ayatollah Khomeini, raising additional concerns among Policy Exchange about the MCB's leadership direction. The MCB election and the report's fallout come at a critical time for Muslim representation in British politics, raising questions about the role of right-wing narratives in shaping public discourse and policy.
Keir Starmer's newly unveiled NHS plans to increase private sector involvement in the NHS by up to 20% have been condemned by NHS campaigners. They say that Starmer's scheme will gift private for-profit healthcare providers with another £2.5 billion of taxpayers' money. They already get £12.3 billion a year from the public purse. Independent healthcare experts say they doubt this will have much impact on NHS waiting lists. They also point out that Starmer's plans contain no new radical proposals and that they are largely an expansion of schemes already in place under the previous Tory government. Kat Hobbs, founder of We Own It, said it's outrageous that Starmer intends to increase NHS privatisation. She condemned the PFI plans, saying they mean the NHS will have to pay the private sector more for services that could be acquired more cheaply in-house.
An unknown number of people are still unaccounted for after Tibet's 6.8 magnitude earthquake on Tuesday. The tremor rocked the Himalayan foothills, destroying buildings and shifting the region's landscape. At least 126 people were known to have been killed and 188 injured on the Tibetan side by lunchtime on Wednesday, according to state broadcaster CCTV. Chinese officials said over 400 people trapped by rubble have been rescued. Authorities have yet to announce how many people are still missing. State media reported an initial survey showed over 3,600 homes had been destroyed in the Shigatse region, home to 800,000 people. Footage broadcast on state media shows emergency tent settlements operated by soldiers and aid workers. Any survivors still trapped under rubble have already endured a night in freezing temperatures, with the high-altitude region experiencing temperatures as low as 0 Fahrenheit overnight. Experts say people trapped, or those without shelter, are at risk of rapid hypothermia and may only be able to live for 5 to 10 hours, even if uninjured. The search area for survivors is the size of Cambodia, adding to the enormous pressure on rescuers.
Josef Binder may get a second chance at seeing his dream Austrian government. He voted for Herbert Kiekel's far-right Freedom Party of Austria, or FPO, in the September polls. And the collapse of the country's centrist coalition talks on Sunday has put Kiekel in the driving seat. While some have voiced fears Kiekel could be too extreme, Binder rejects this.
I think he is a very reliable man. And what I appreciate about him is that he's someone who doesn't bend. I think he is a person who does not allow himself to be corrupted or bribed. Maybe then he's dangerous from the point of view of others. But in reality, he's not dangerous at all.
Kiekel has been tasked with forming a government and has called on the Conservative People's Party, or OVP, for imminent coalition talks. He threatened the prospect of a snap election if the party isn't, quote, honest when meeting. That's while his support is still rising and the OVP's falling. Kiekel is Austria's first FPO chancellor since the party was founded in the 1950s, under a leader who had been a senior SS officer and Nazi lawmaker. One political analyst branded this a crucial moment in Austria's history. Both FPO and OVP overlap on issues including immigration policy and cutting taxes. And Binder approved of the potential partnership.
I was very surprised myself. I assumed that there would be this three-party coalition, and that these last few days have seen such dynamic events. I was really, really surprised, but also delighted. Because I think from my point of view, that an FPO and OVP government is the best solution for Austria in this phase. Where we are now, facing these major economic problems, perhaps also in Europe as a whole.
Abdul Hakim al-Shatter was one of the dozens of Syrian helpers shoveling mud out of gardens in the small Austrian town of Kitzendorf after September flooding caused widespread damage. Now, 4 months later, the 44-year-old is looking to the upcoming government formation with trepidation, especially with Herbert Kiekel, head of the Eurosceptic Russian-friendly Freedom Party, more likely to become the next Austrian leader. His party also campaigned on promises to enact tougher asylum laws and crack down on illegal immigration if victorious. Al-Shatter had hoped the sights of Syrians devoting time and energy to bring relief to the hard-hit state of Lower Austria would take some steam out of the often strident campaign rhetoric about uncontrolled immigration. Now he fears there will be a wave of hatred and racism directed towards immigrants such as himself. Speaking from his local restaurant, he said, I am not afraid for myself. I work, I pay taxes. Kiekel can say whatever he wants, but he can't do anything. We live in a state of law here. There is a constitution, but still there will be so much hate and racism. Fleeing war in their homeland, the number of Syrians living in Austria rose more than eightfold between 2015 and 2024, according to official data, with 95,180 there as of January 2024. Al-Shatter, a painter and decorator who now lives in Vienna, arrived in 2015, is also head of the Free Syrian Community, a group founded in Vienna to promote democracy and to assist newcomers with Austrian rules and values to facilitate better integration. Al-Shatter also worries for his wife and 4 daughters ranging from 6 to 17 years old. He says his organization is getting many calls and messages from people asking what they should do. People are very afraid and they can't help or study or work. I am frightened for my family and my children. They will now be discriminated against everywhere and there will be so much hate and racism everywhere. Originally from Homs, Al-Shatter was a human rights activist in Syria and says he can only return home when there is real freedom and democracy, something he thinks is a long way in the future, if even at all possible.
Our risk assessment to the general population is still low.
After the first reported human death from H5N1 bird flu in the United States, the World Health Organization on Tuesday said that despite the recent death, the risk to humans remains low. The patient who died from the virus in Louisiana was over 65 years old and had been exposed to both backyard chickens and wild birds. That's according to health officials who said the patient also had underlying medical conditions, heightening the risk for serious disease.
In a way, the risk is pretty localized, although it does seem to be growing across the U.S.
Sarah Michaels is an assistant professor in New Orleans who studies infectious diseases. She told Reuters wild birds infected the patient's domestic birds, which then infected the patient.
This is not a strain of influenza that can spread between people. It is still a good time to get your flu shot. Flu shot's going to prevent not avian influenza, but seasonal influenza and the possibility of being co-infected with those viruses, which is really what we're more concerned in the long run, that this bird flu that we have spreading across the U.S. right now has some kind of mutation or a reassortment event, which makes it more transmissible between people, which is what we have not seen yet.
Experts around the world have been studying bird flu's effect on animals and the risk to humans. Nearly 70 people in the U.S., most of whom are farm workers, have contracted bird flu since April. The virus has circulated among poultry flocks and dairy herds, according to the CDC.
After a one-year delay, the new tech-infused indoor golf league created by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy finally launched in Florida under bright lights in prime time, ushering in what organizers hope is a new chapter for the sport. Unlike the genteel atmosphere reserved for typical golf events, TGL made a rollicking debut, complete with strobe lights, smoke machines, enthusiastic player introductions, and a DJ that helped to keep the mood elevated. The virtual hole designs were also unlike anything players experience on tour, with golfers finding themselves playing on an active volcano, over an ocean cove, in a desert canyon, among mountain peaks, and on a boomerang-shaped fairway.
I think it was amazing to be a part of. I think it's the future of golf, and it's really cool to be a part of. I said it earlier before today, I'm always so jealous of basketball and football guys that they get to do this so much more than we do, and it's cool playing in a stadium. The crowd gets going a little bit more, the energy is a little bit different from a golf tournament, but it's so much fun and gets you going a little bit more, I think.
I think just learning how to bounce back in this game and that sort of ring around the rosy where you got three of us and try and get a good vibe going and sort of almost maybe slow it down if we could, maybe use a little bit more of that 40 seconds or a timeout, we don't really have a coach to blame, as Fitzy said earlier. Usually after a bad game you can blame your coach, but we have no one to blame other than ourselves.
While not competing in the season opener, 15 times major champion Tiger Woods and 4-time major winner Rory McIlroy were among those in attendance, and both patrolled the playing area during warm-ups inside the custom-built arena that seats 1,500 people. TGL is a hybrid of virtual and real-life play, featuring teams of mic'd-up PGA Tour players hitting shots at a 5-story high simulator screen before moving to a screen that can rotate 360 degrees, creating hole-to-hole variations. After players shook hands, 2019 British Open champion Shane Lowry of the Bay Club realised he forgot his tee and, with a 40-second shot clock ticking, rushed to retrieve one before hitting the first shot in TGL history. The fast-paced action also featured some unique rules, with Lowry's team opting to play the hammer early on to double the par 3 thirds points value. Lowry, Wyndham Clark and Ludwig Aberg held a commanding 6-1 lead over New York Golf Club's Sander Schaffel, Ricky Fowler and Matt Fitzpatrick after their session before sealing a 9-2 victory. TGL was supposed to launch early last year, but was delayed after the inflated dome of the host facility was damaged and later replaced with a steel-supported structure. Woods will make his TGL debut next week with Jupiter Links Golf Club, while Northern Irishman McIlroy is set to make his first start on January 27th as part of Boston Common Golf.